Well, a lot of people don't really understand that architecture is a language. It's a language that involves not just visual, which most people think architecture is visual, but it involves all of the senses of being a human being. There are your ears, your eyes, your sense of touch, taste, that kind of thing. Well, you don't really taste architecture, but what we try to do is we find ways of connecting to people with the messages, and we use the elements of the building, the form, the space, and the way we order the forms in relationship to the space to communicate powerful messages about whatever the idea of the building is about. So how do we do that? How do we get more people to understand that? Well, one of the challenges that I've discovered personally, and it's one of the reasons why I do what I do, is a lot of people don't know much about design, either because the profession has not been very good about communicating what we do in design. So myself, what I have done is I decided to dedicate my life to communicating the importance of design and the relationships that people have to design and culture. So that's what we need to do, is we need to find ways of getting people to understand that design is a very powerful influencer that could be saying a lot of things subliminally. Give you an example. Okay, let's look at, well, before I get to the examples, let's talk about an example that people are more familiar with about how it influences them. Most people like and really appreciate music. Music is a very powerful communicator as well. People just immediately react in some way emotionally to some different kinds of music, and they either relate to it, they hate it, they love it, that kind of thing. Same with architecture, but they might not realize that even when they're walking through space, it's actually not only housing them, it's not just keeping them safe from the environment like the weather or the rain, it's also sending powerful messages in whatever aspect that the designers want it to be. A lot of people don't realize that architecture is affecting them all the time. People kind of walk through space not realizing that the built environment, as well as the natural environment, can send powerful messages and can be designed in a way to influence what we think and how we feel. When you're talking about a World Expo site, we're talking about a site where an important opportunity for encouraging cooperation of a community of nations gathering together on a single place, which one of the important things that I want to talk about is there would be no Expo movement if it weren't for architecture. Back in 1851, there was this great London exhibition, and it was all started because a group of like-minded people decided to get together, and they were able to put together a single building, which was called the Crystal Palace. They put the Crystal Palace together, and all of the nations were housed under the Crystal Palace. So if you really think about the World Expo movement, it began with architecture and a diplomatic aim to bring the countries of the world together. So today, we're not in 1851 obviously, but today we are in 2022, and we continue to have problems, crises in the world. So what I think is really important for me to say is that we need to keep gathering together in a single place to bring people together so that they can continue to communicate and connect to each other. Now, when you do something like that, how do you influence each other? How do you actually say something to each other? It begins with the experience of architecture. Like back in 1851, it all began with a building. And when Joseph Paxton designed this building, he specifically was sending a powerful message about transparency, awe-inspiring space, optimism, and hope for the future. So the World Expo movement is always about forward-thinking optimism for the future. A building can start to sway a visitor from a World Expo by, first of all, when you first see it on a site, the point of what a lot of countries want to do is they want to get people to visit their national pavilions. So it's critical for that building to say something powerful or go, oh, what is that in the distance? I want to get closer to it. So then if you can create a building that has a statement that is aligned to that positive message, then you'll get more people to go, gee, I want to get closer to it. Then there's the entry experience. And then once you go from outside the building, seeing it as an object in space, to the point where you're part of the experience, you're inside the experience, you're in the space, this is where a lot of nations start to want to present their culture. Now, again, if it's done well, it's done strategically and intentionally to align with a single message. There's a lot of planning that goes into this. So you want to have a message that's very, it has to be factual, it has to be optimistic, it wants to be hopeful. The design of the U.S. Pavilion has changed through time, and again, it depends on what period you're looking at. I can talk a little bit about the design of the U.S. Pavilion with respect to the Cold War period and to where we are today. I did a documentary called Face of a Nation, What Happened to the World's Fair, and it tracks that period from the Cold War to basically 2010, 2015. And in this making of this documentary, I discovered some things I didn't know about. The design of the pavilion was considered an important opportunity to influence foreign audiences about what is America during the Cold War, because we were actually competing peacefully at world fairs with countries that might not be as friendly with us. And so the World Fair movement is about peaceful competition like the Olympics, but it's for art, culture, science, and technology, and architecture. So the U.S. Pavilion, in the period where we were at the height of the Cold War, it was considered extremely important for us to be sending important messages about what America is, what America was at that time. I really want to talk about how important design is as a language that connects to people. Again, I started this discussion with really trying to explain how architecture really does affect us. My life is architecture because of my parents' vision at the World Fair. Everything I do is about architecture. Why? Why am I doing this? Because I know how it feels to see something, experience something, and affect me for the rest of my life. And that's the power of the World's Fair and the architecture of the World's Fair. Look at the Eiffel Tower. It is the symbol of France. Look at the Geodesic Dome in Montreal, the 1967 U.S. Pavilion. It's become this icon that Disney copied, that you'll see domes all over the world. Look at anything. Think about the fact that, your own homes, your own spaces, you make decisions about what that's like. I think it's important for everyone to start to understand more about the way that the spaces that we live in can affect the way that we feel and think.